Do you remember what President Trump said before he got elected? If you elect me, I will suspend, I will revoke the Johnson Amendment. They made it seem as if the Johnson Amendment was restricting free speech. But the veneer, the guise was, the Johnson Amendment is bringing a separation of what? Church and state. And now he says, I'm going to bring power back to the church, removing the Johnson Amendment. Now, of course, he did that. Now, listen to this speech.
It was the great Thomas Jefferson who said, "The God who gave us life gave us liberty." Jefferson asked, can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? Among those freedoms is the right to worship according to our own beliefs. That is why I will get rid of and totally destroy the Johnson Amendment and allow our representatives of faith to speak freely and without fear of retribution. I will do that, remember.
All right. Because my time is limited, I'm simply going to roll the next clips. All right? Listen.
Every single election and affected in the right way.
There's an awakening taking place, and this awakening is much bigger than we think.
Yes.
It's an awakening to God, but it's also an awakening that's taking place first in the church, and then it's taking place in government. But we're waking up to something, and I think President Trump has helped us to do that by really taking the muzzle off of the preachers and saying, you guys need to express what you believe.
Now, that's a good point that you brought up, and it leads back to your original question, what's at stake? President Trump has issued an executive order to the Treasury Department, that is the taxing authority in this country, to not pursue what's called the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment passed by Lyndon Johnson when he was a senator from Texas back in the 1950s, essentially muzzled the mouth of anyone once they'd become a pastor or a minister.
So now, this is what is called a game changer. You remember now, do you remember during the midterm elections, they were calling for righteous judges to be placed on all levels of the courts? From the lower courts all the way to the Supreme Court, to legislate morality in America, to bring a theocracy. Now they're calling for over 1,000 pastors to run for civil office to turn this nation back to God. August 8th, 2019. Friends, my time is up, so let me run through this quickly. Listen.
Well, we don't have many answers as this 2020 presidential race unfolds, but here is one thing that we do know. With all the extra vitriol aimed at Donald Trump this time around, the president is going to need an even better showing by white conservative evangelicals if he's going to win a second term. The folks in the pews are going to need to show up at the ballot box, and it's really going to be up to pastors to get them motivated. Now, that effort begins in earnest Thursday and Friday down at Liberty University. This is a closed-door event. One of the largest evangelical universities in the country is going to host it, and it's organized by the American Renewal Project. It's led by influential political mechanic David Lane. They are bringing in hundreds of pastors for the affair. They dub all of this Pastors in Pews, and the goal is to get them motivated, the pastors, to speak out boldly to their congregations about the political and cultural issues of the day. So, in essence, the flock will end up being motivated. Here's a past sampling.
These politicians aren't good at much, but they're good at this. Seeing which way the wind is blowing. We need to change the direction of the wind.
Okay, friends, how many of you believe that the things which were at the beginning will be repeated in the last days, and that there's no new thing under the sun? They're calling now for pastors to become civil leaders. Think about that. Watch the statement now. This is the beginning of America. Great Controversy, page 297. GC 297 says, watch carefully, the regulation adopted by the early colonists of permitting who? Only members of the church to vote or to hold what? Office in the civil government led to what, friends? To most pernicious results. What are they calling for now? Pastors to become ministers. That was the origin, the movement of America in the 1700s. Now we're seeing a repetition of it. Oh, watch now. This measure had been accepted as a means of what? Preserving the purity of the state, but it resulted in what? The corruption of the church. Thus, watch now, thus again was demonstrated the evil results so often witnessed in the history of the church from whose days? So what was happening in Rome under Constantine? The nation is pagan. We want to bring back morality. We want the church to control the... Today they are saying now, America is ungodly. Let's bring back morality. Now we have our quote unquote holy judges. Now we want 1,000 pastors to become politicians. And what did Constantine do afterwards? Enforce Sunday worship. Where are we, my friends? Where are we? It's Sunday coming. It's the mark of the beast coming. In the history of the church, from the days of Constantine to the present, of attempting to build up the church by the aid of the state, or of appealing to the secular power in support of the gospel of Jesus, who declared, my what? My kingdom is not of this world. The union of the church with the state, by the degree, never so slight, while it may appear to bring the world nearer to the church, does in reality but bring the church nearer to where? Okay, listen now. Watch carefully.
In addition, many of these pastors are also going to take part in a political training session as they mull whether to run for local or statewide office. Now, it's something we have talked about before with the architect, David Lane. Have a look.
If the Lord does it, we're going to turn America back to Him and reestablish a Christian culture. Some of these values are going to reign supreme. So my guess is, spiritually speaking, we need mercy, the mercy of God.
You know, in 2016, David Lane's group was influential and active. In 60 days before the 2016 general election, the last 2 months, they spent $9 million in 6 battleground states, including some big prizes like Florida, Ohio, North Carolina as well. Now, the bigger goal here, of course, is pastors getting trained to run for political office, as we've mentioned. In 2016, listen to this, roughly 200 pastors stepped up to run for office. 2018, it was 300 more. Missouri specifically, 5 pastors became state legislators, and this year, Missouri passed a ban on abortions after 8 weeks of pregnancy, so you can see some of the result. By the way, the goal for 2020, 1,000 pastors running for office. Of course, that would be a game changer, and the state-by-state approach to all of this begins this week down in Lynchburg. David Brody, CBN.
So in the midterms, in 2018, they had approximately 200 pastors who ran for civil office, and the impact was felt in the state legislatures, right? Now they want from 200 to how many? 1,000 to bring God back into America, to turn America back to God. What is that, friends? Church and state union, Sunday observance. The church is weak. Now they want the state to do its work. Let's close now. Sister White says, again, going back to the founding of America, it was the desire for liberty of conscience that inspired the pilgrims to brave the perils of the long journey across the sea, to endure the hardships and dangers of the wilderness, and with God's blessing to lay on the shores of America the foundation of a mighty nation, yet honest and God-fearing as they were. The Pilgrims did not yet comprehend the great principle of what, friends? Religious liberty, the freedom which they sacrificed so much to secure for themselves. They were not equally ready to grant to whom? Others. Look at this now. The regulation was adopted by the colonists that what, friends? Only what? Church members should have a voice. Where? In the civil government, a kind of state church was formed. Are we here? The image of the beast. Last sentence. It was, watch this now, thus the secular power was in the hands of whom? The church. It was not long before these measures led to what? The inevitable, the sure result of what? Persecution, my friends. Shall we pray?